Hello, my group's topic today will be discussing doing gender. This video is an assignment for a sociology class, Body and Society at San Diego State University. The purpose of this assignment is to help inform us on key issues related to the sociology of the body. The positions being advocated may not necessarily reflect the opinions of the students developing this video. My name is Riley Jones, and my focus will be on the gender socialization process. This is how we learn to act male or female in our society. Many influences go into this process, and they have outcomes on how a person acts and looks or believes they should in terms of their gender expression. In our society, women and men embody gender norms different ways. Women show their bodies typically with long hair and more feminine clothing, such as dresses. Men dress more stereotypically masculine and keep their hair short. Babies are able to recognize this by a year old, and by 3 years old, most children have formed their own gender identity. There are many societal influences that teach children the gender differences between men and women in our society, including parents, school, and the media. Parents are the first source of information for most children, so this is where they first learn gender norms. These can be reinforced by toys. As seen in the image at the top, the girl has a baby doll. This teaches girls from an early age that being a mother is a very important part of being a woman, which is not always true. The boy is giving a robot in the image, showing that he should like science and building things. Activities also play a big part in our gender expression. For example, when I was younger, the men in my family would go into the woods to get firewood before the winter, and the women would stay back and cook with the little girls. I always wanted to go out into the woods instead. I was told that the women had to cook. I now know that they were teaching me how to embody a woman in our society. One way schools reinforce these gender norms is by separating boys and girls for different activities. Also, a study done by the American Sociological Association showed that boys who were seen as more tough were able to enhance their social status at school, showing that embodying gender norms is needed to maintain a high social status in society. Lastly, media influences the way kids believe they should look or act. One example addressed in our textbook is that male sports coverage is very extensive in comparison to women's, thus reinforcing that boys should play sports. Another is princess stories. These stories show women in dresses with their hair and makeup done, like in the image at the bottom, showing girls that their look should be a priority. An article by Time actually found that by age 10, many girls have the idea that their looks are their key asset. Personally, as a child, seeing these princesses made me believe that that is what I should look like, giving me unrealistic body expectations for myself as I got older. Lastly, I would like to discuss the consequences of gender norms on children. The Time article also found that young girls are told to always be safe, while boys are more often encouraged to be brave and take risks. These are not bad words of advice, but due to the lack of balance in these messages, girls often end up believing that they should not take risks, like in job opportunities. Also, a study done by UCSD found that among gender norms, boys wearing girls' clothing was seen as very negative, almost as bad as stealing. In the image is a boy in a dress. Clearly, it is not as bad as stealing, but that is how it is often treated when a boy does not embody what society believes the boy should. Issues discussed in this part of the video can lead to unhealthy behaviors, such as fighting for boys and psychological issues with girls about their appearances in an attempt to embody what society says they should. Thank you.
How's it going, everyone? My name is Gabe Maldonado. I'm part of the Doing Gender group, and today I'm going to be explaining what exactly hegemonic masculinity is, how it is being expressed today, what it looks like, and then real-life examples. So to start off, what is hegemonic masculinity? It can be defined by the 4 dictates that you must follow. Pretty much, you do not want to be feminine. That is a big no. Another thing you want is to always be pursuing a higher status. You want to be confident and self-reliant, and you also need to have a certain amount of toughness to you. So looking at this LeBron James picture, obviously he's not looking very feminine. He's reached a very high status in life. He's confident, and obviously he's tough. And hegemonic masculinity is dominant in Western society. What it looks like, right here I have a great example. This is Sean Oakman, basically a guy who is going to dwarf even other people on a football field. You want to be big, muscular, and honestly, the bigger the better for, as in what you want to look like if you're following hegemonic masculinity. And of course, not everybody can, so that is one problem with it. Not every man can exactly look like Sean Oakman. How it is expressed, Hegemonic masculinity is an emphasis on heterosexuality and a stern condemnation of homosexuality. Hegemonic masculinity is basically constructed in relation as to what we understand as feminine, where hegemonic masculinity is for the most part the opposite of femininity. Obviously on top of those, obviously prefers muscular body types, the epitome being an American football player. In real life, a great example of these traits can be seen in our president's conduct. President Trump is hyper-competitive, abrasive, and a free-speaking person, which can be seen in how he treats members of the media and anyone who he feels he needs to talk about. In the presidential race of 2016, Trump attacked Clinton's personality and reputation by saying that she is unfit to lead a country, basically, and a reason he was selected is because of his example of hegemonic masculinity. Thank you for listening to my part of the project, and I hope you enjoy the rest.
So this segment of the video will focus on femininity and doing gender. So the first part is traditional femininity, and so it's based off of bodily differences with the male and female body, and so they perceived women as naturally weaker, more inferior, and less stable than the male body. And so from this formed these aspects of femininity that reflected these views on women. And so in the chart you can see that women were supposed to be submissive, home-oriented, vulnerable, fragile, acceptance of marriage, sexual receptive, and they're supposed to be mothers. And so a lot of this is how women were viewed to be or encouraged to be in what was deemed as feminine. And so this is a particular type of femininity called emphasized femininity, and it's accommodating the interests and desires of men. As you can see in the ad on the far right, the woman is serving the man food, and the height difference can also portray power differences and how women are inferior and man is more superior in this type of femininity and androcentric society. So next, it's gender norms and female embodiment. And so it encompasses women being encouraged to see themselves as more of an object of other scrutiny and are taught to become feminine in ways that emphasize containment and control. So as you can see in the picture, she's she's an object of other scrutiny. It's the male gaze, and from childhood all the way up to adulthood, women and their bodies are subject to so much control and so much direction, and saying this is what you're supposed to do with your body, this is how you're supposed to be, this is how you're supposed to act. It's just a lot of everything, and it's so much different than a male's experience with the body. And so, like boys, they're encouraged to be physical and play and roughhouse and do all these things, but women are more discouraged from it, and this adds to women's docility. And so, as you can see in that lower picture, studies showing women take up less space, and that's what they're taught with containment and control. And so, on the opposite, men are supposed to, make themselves big, take up more space, assert dominance. But women are supposed to reflect these traditional feminine ideals and be small, act small, be fragile, docile, and it's very disempowering. But this was traditional femininity and kind of still reflected in this androcentric world today. And so this is with gender roles too as well, kind of mentioned in that last slide of being the homemaker and being dependent on a man, and it's a lot. And so next is challenges to traditional femininity. And so of course there have been challenges and there's resistance, and there's all these movements today that fight the patriarchy and all these outdated ideals about what it is to be feminine and all this containment and control stuff. And so they integrate ideals like assertiveness, confidence, and self-determination. And so you can see it's, fighting these unrealistic beauty ideals, women being empowered and being whatever they want of how they deem being feminine is. And so like the future is female. And it's just breaking this patriarchal, androcentric society of what a woman should be. And so thank you for listening. And here are our references.